Start. So if you haven't signed in, sign in. And yeah. So our itinerary, who we are, upcoming events and competitions, and then our guest speaker. So what is TPID? We are a multidisciplinary organization that connects students to the theme park industry. We do that through theme park trips and industry tours, industry speakers, alumni and internship help, fun social events like skating and stuff, and our competitions. We have two design teams. We have our ride design team that is working on a trackless dark ride that meets on Mondays at 7:30, and we have our haunted house design team that meets on Tuesdays at 7:30 in the same room. And then we have our Busch Gardens behind the scenes tour. So it will be Friday, April 8th, I believe. And then the sign up form is on the link tree. So if you know for sure that you can go ahead and sign up and do the form. And yeah, there are limited spots.
Spots are filling up fast, so do it. This is Swamp Thrills. So there's but there's updates for Swamp Thrills. So the presentation day is still going to be on April 9th. We'll have a Zoom and in-person section. And then next week on Wednesday is our GBM. We're going to be having our Swamp Thrills workshop at 6:30, and it's going to be in our regular Matherly room. So if you want to learn presentation skills for Swamp Thrills, definitely go.
Alrighty. And then at that Swamp Thrills workshop, we're going to be doing our constitutional amendments. So everybody there will be voting on the changes that we're making. The changes are really just kind of small changes with our election process, and all of them just have to be reviewed and voted in by people. And yeah, all active members get to vote.
And then the last thing is we are going to have TPED elections soon. So the elections are going to be specifically for president, internal and external vice president, as well as treasurer. And then the other positions we're going to have applications for, and they'll be appointed at the end of the semester. We're going to have a lot more details about it soon.
Mm-hmm. All right, and that's it. Do you guys have any questions?
Who's the guest speaker?
You! Yay! Scott Harkless.
Hello, everybody. Should I stand over here somewhere?
There's no camera, so whatever.
Okay, great. It's better for all of you. Okay. My name is Scott Harkless. Just a little bit about myself. I work for a company called Alcorn McBride. We'll talk about that in a little bit in a minute. I'm an electronic engineer. That's what I went to school for. So I was sitting where you're sitting, not at UF, but about 20 years ago. Doesn't seem that long ago, but it was. So I've been with Alcorn pretty much that entire time. I got hired to work there straight out of graduation. I had no idea what they really did at the time. I kind of got exposed to the company because I was working at a science museum in school, and they had Alcorn equipment. I liked using it. So I was like, hey, cool stuff. I'd like to go be a part of that. Then I realized how ingrained in the industry they are. So anyway, my background's engineering. For a while with the company, I did a lot of circuit board design, bringing up boards, programming, a lot of C programming, still that way. And then kind of got involved with a lot of field installation, actually going out, putting the equipment in the attractions all over the world. Engineering, half of that, about half of it in the field. And then kind of got more into the sales side of things, like training people how to use this stuff, making little application notes to explain it, helping guide our product development to make sure we can actually make things that are going to sell. So deciding what to do next, that kind of stuff. So that's what happens when you're with the company for a long time. You start doing stuff like that. So anyway, that's enough about me. Alcorn McBride, how many of you guys have heard of Alcorn McBride before? That's good. Sometimes it's zero. It's okay. The reason why a lot of times it's zero is we're not a very big company. We're only about 20 people. It's kind of funny because in the industry, some people tend to think we're like this titan, you know, because we're pretty much in every major attraction in some way, but we're really just a company of 20 people. And the reason we probably seem that way to them is because we really focus on theme parks. We design like almost Intel level boards, but it's all about theme parks, building the best equipment, show control, and video and audio for theme parks. So we focus on that, and in some ways I feel like we're kind of an old school company. We're really all about relationships. It's one of the reasons why I really wanted to come here in person. I'm a people person. I like talking to people. And, having conversations and answering questions and stuff. So we kind of conduct business that way. Of course, we have a website with all these training programs and stuff, but we like to go out and meet our key customers, fly out to LA, buy them lunch, walk through the park, see what they're working on, 5 years from now, and help build stuff to help do that. That's what we do. So the way that we help them is we actually create hardware. So we make a lot of products that are basically buried in hidden equipment rooms throughout the park, throughout the attractions, doing a lot of the show and audiovisual experience, the show experience. So it's very purpose-built stuff. There's a lot of companies that try to do that stuff just using computers, running software, show control software, or video server software, but we actually go embedded. So we're doing, how many people are in here at double E's? I heard there were some MEs, but okay, cool. We're doing things like embedded processors, FPGAs, that kind of stuff. So purpose-built design. And it gives us a lot of power because we go out in the field and theme parks are weird and they have weird requirements and weird things that they're looking for, and we're able to design those weird things. So it's very cool. Nice thing about embedded stuff, it's also bulletproof. We can design it to be rugged. It doesn't need to be rebooted. If it's a video server, it's designed to do one thing very well, play video. So it's a good example. We had a customer approach us probably about 5 years ago now, and one of the most popular attractions in the world. And they have a system that's basically a moving carousel. It rotates and it's got projectors in it, playing 4K uncompressed video in each of these little domes on the end of the carousel. And the problem is the video servers are on board that carousel because they couldn't pull enough wiring and cabling up through the slip ring on the carousel to have it play video. So this thing vibrates and shakes, and they were using these PC-based video servers, and it was just shaking them apart. The graphics card would pop out, or RAM chip, or whatever, and it sucked for them because they would have to shut down the whole ride, one of the most popular attractions in the world, shut it down, get everybody off the ride, de-energize the track, go out there, hop on the carousel, do whatever they needed to do to fix the computer, and then bring it all back up. So a ride with a 2-hour wait time just went to a 3-hour wait time just so they could do that. So this was a problem for them. So they reached out and they said, hey, we heard you guys had this thing you just came out with. Can it survive, 3 Gs and high vibration? And we said, well, we don't know. We'll figure it out. So we kind of put it to the test. I don't know if I'm gonna have audio, but if not, it's okay. But we were just kind of messing around. We made a video. This is Hunter. He's our director of product development. And so we started doing a bunch of G testing, vibration testing on the unit. So we just made this little video where he actually literally picked it up and threw it down on his desk. There's a god-awful crashing noise, and he says, still running. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff we do. We get asked to do weird things, and we accommodate. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about our history here, but kind of our company motto is have fun, make money, and it's very appropriate. I hope you guys someday get a chance to visit the place. If you're ever down in the Orlando area, let us know. But we try to have a lot of fun, not just at work, but out in the field. Like, we're basically in the business of fun. That's what theme parks are all about, right? We're on kind of the technical side of it, but that's what we're doing. So we have fun, we create fun, and we also have to make money because we're a business and we have to actually fund the development of these cool things that we're doing. So how we operate. So the origins, Alcorn McBride was founded by Steve Alcorn. So the story actually goes back further than these slides indicate, but basically he met this girl in college, UC Berkeley, and they liked each other a lot. And he was a theater major at the time. She was an engineering major. Her goal in life was to be the first female Imagineer. That's what she wanted to do. Okay, so he wanted to be with her more, so he switched his major. He switched over to engineering. So her dream ended up coming true. She ended up graduating, becoming the first female engineer for WDI. And he ended up working together with her to basically develop a lot of stuff. Back in those days, WDI, Walt Disney Imagineering, was called WED. Anybody know what that stands for? Good. Sharp group. So yeah, so back in those days, WED pretty much did everything themselves. They built their own control systems. They built everything themselves. So Steve basically became part of that. One of the first jobs he was contracted to do was American Adventure at Epcot, and all custom control systems. So American Adventure, everybody seen this show? Yeah, okay, cool. Has anybody had a backstage tour of that show? Okay. It's fascinating. So this is what it looked like pre-opening. You can see they're still filling the lagoon here. This is American Adventure over here. The way we got this picture is Steve's boss at the time, his name's Glenn Burkett. He owns a company called Burkett Engineering now, but he was a pilot. So he would fly around all the time, inspect the job site, which is why I'm allowed to show you these videos or photos. So this is the American Adventure Theater from where you see it as the guest. Side view. Now, this is what it looks like from behind. Hard to see on the screen, I'm sorry, but basically the theater, behind the theater is about twice as big of a space as in front where you sit as the guest. And the reason why is they're doing rear projection for one thing. The other thing is there's this very complex mechanical carousel system underneath the theater. And it's kind of like little cartridges, and each cartridge has a scene of animatronic figures that will pop up on basically like a custom scissor lift thing. So they'll pop up for their portion, pop down, the carousel will move forward or backward to the next thing, and they'll pop up and pop down. So very elaborate, and the whole building is built around this carousel system. It's kind of crazy thing to see. This is looking down into that carousel, so you can see Mark Twain right here. All packed in there. So rear view also, you can see some of the equipment cabinets down there. Some of that equipment is still there, still running, so which is pretty impressive. 1982. Okay, so he definitely got his feet wet doing a lot of that stuff. Met a lot of friendships that would last, or business associates that would last, contacts at Disney and other companies as well. This right here is actually Epcot Central. So the whole idea with Epcot is that they were going to centralize everything as far as audio and controls. So they pulled all these wires to a room that's bigger than this. There's nothing but equipment cabinets full of terminated wires coming from all over the park. And then in the next room, they had this room right here with these devices called bin loops. So this big like stove washing machine size thing is called a bin loop. And what it is it's basically a tape player playing audio tracks on a tape. Now, normally when you do that, you think of like those old audio playback or record devices, they go reel to reel, right? One reel empties, the other one fills up. Well, these things are designed to loop indefinitely. And so rather than do that, what it does is it runs the tape through a head and spits it back into this bin. And it's all like very lubricated and everything to keep it from sticking and tearing and whatnot, so that it can be fed back into the head again and just keep going. So kind of a little elaborate machine, but extremely high maintenance. They had to basically open these things up every night and turtle wax the film or the tape to keep it from snagging, breaking. So, but kind of interesting. They were kind of pushing the edge of technology at the time. They still do, but this is what that room looked like from the guest standpoint. They were actually doing tours through here, so you could see what it was like, or actually see the real equipment running the park. Nice shot before they put the skin on the Epcot sphere there. And I don't think we have this photo in this pack, but Disney's very safety oriented right now. But back in those days, people were just climbing up to the top of the sphere. There's like actually an access hatch up there. And they'd go up there and Glenn would fly his plane by and take pictures of them. So there's a lot of pictures of people just on top of the sphere. So, and I think Steve pointed out that this photo was taken 2 months before it opened. So there's buildings that aren't even there yet. It's crazy how quickly that came together. So basically Epcot opened in 1982 on an insane schedule, and Steve was obviously a part of that. Unfortunately, shortly after that, Disney kind of wrapped up some stuff and they let a lot of people go. So I think they were wrapping up Hong Kong at the time, but they let a lot of people go, and that actually led to the formation of a lot of companies, including ours. So companies like Alcorn McBride, Bergen Engineering, all kinds of companies like that. Just people like Steve and Glenn who had spun off and wanted to do their own thing for the industry. So did some consulting for a little while, but ultimately ended up forming Alcorn McBride officially in 1986. So this is the first office that was in Westlake Village, California. But it didn't take long for them to move to Orlando. So in the early days of Universal Studios, Alcorn was consulted to do a lot of stuff. Universal was, when it first opened, that park was in rough shape. So a lot of stuff was not working. And so we were hired to consult and help fix a lot of that stuff. So does anybody know what ride this is? What attraction this is?
Is that
Earthquake, the disaster, the ride.
I don't know who you are, but you're correct, sir.
I'm over the Zoom.
All right, Zoom, you're correct. Yeah, this is Earthquake. So I bet you can guess what this one is. Yeah, Jaws basically almost had to be rebuilt. Cool. So in 1992, we established this office. We were actually in this one for a while, but this is in Metro West Orlando. And, oh, I thought there was another one. No, okay. So what we do is basically develop hardware, and what we're trying to do effectively is build an ecosystem of tools that basically can be used to build attractions, especially from the show experience standpoint. So it involves a lot of equipment. I could talk about some of that stuff, but basically when these attractions are built, especially nowadays, they are multi-million-dollar attractions, sometimes in the 8 or 9 figures. So they can't just hire one company to build everything. All right, so they cut things up into pieces so that there's less financial risk, and also because people have specialties. There are companies that are very, very good at show control. So they want to hire companies that do that very well. There's companies that specialize in motion control and products, hire them. So it's all about eliminating financial risk or reducing it, but also dividing it up to people who specialize in different systems. The problem is, what it comes down to is when it comes time to tie those systems together. Okay, and that's kind of where we come in. Basically what they do is they'll put one of our systems, a controller, show controller, at the head end of each system. We can talk to each other and synchronize perfectly, and we can kind of speak a common language that everybody, no matter which of these disciplines they're in, understands. And that concept is basically the concept of a timeline. So think like a linear editing software like Audition or Premiere or Final Cut. We think of things like starting here, ending here, and then these things happening along the way. That's basically what a timeline is. And so we do that with audiovisual experience, lighting, animatronics. We can tie all of those things to the timeline and kind of make them happen as they're supposed to, very precisely. So, and then we try to fill in other gaps here as well. So they need high quality video playback for attractions, for projection, because you're surrounded by these huge screens right in your face. Synchronized audio, a lot of point source stuff. If you want the sound to sound like it's coming from that character over there, that character over there, a lot of weird stuff like that going on. And we do a lot of special stuff for onboard. So you get on vehicles now and you hear a lot of audio coming from the vehicle itself. It's basically the way to make it sound the best right there with you. So we do a lot of stuff that lives on the vehicle. And then there's a lot of other companies that participate in this as well. So this slide's actually from an association we kind of started last year, which is basically 5 manufacturers coming together so that we can actually build this and show people how it's really made without them having to go into a real attraction. So pretty cool. All right, so I'm just gonna flip through this real quick just so you can see a couple of examples and I can kind of explain why these things exist. So this is an example of a product of ours, and this one kind of goes back to our roots because what really started us was Steve realizing that Disney kept developing these control systems over and over again from scratch. And he was just kind of having the realization of, we do this all the time now, guys. How about we just make like a product that we can kind of just buy off the shelf and use to do this for the next attraction, So that was basically the genesis of a product we called the V16. And it's funny because the reason why it was originally given that name is because it was designed to control up to 16 Laserdisc players. Does anybody know what a Laserdisc player is? Okay, so yeah, Pioneer made this device called the LDV 8000. It was a Laserdisc player, so like that big. But they had a lot of need to synchronize video, so they could do like multi-screen projection and have everything look like it was playing together. So Steve developed a device that would do that. And that device ended up proving useful in way more ways than just that. It could synchronize a lot of things, not just video. So, and by the way, you'll notice this is like rack mount equipment, like this thing right here in front of me. So this stuff is just designed to live in an equipment room, buried beneath the park, which is why you've never seen it before. So yeah, again, it's purpose-built design. There are companies that try to do show control with basically software, but there's just a lot of problems with that. They have to use like dongles for licenses. There's issues with that, and just Windows and Mac OS, as you saw today, when we started 5 minutes late, they're just designed to be babysat a little bit. They need humans to keep them running. They don't want that in a park. They want it running 24/7, 365 with as little maintenance as possible. So designing this using an embedded processor and basically bare metal firmware makes this a super reliable device. This is what our programming front end looks like for show control. So you can see it's very visual, like that timeline like I talked about. I guess the other part I forgot to mention is what show control is all about other than timing and synchronization. It's just about controlling devices, like this Crestron device up here. This is a typical like boardroom controller, or I would call like a more mainstream AV controller. It's designed to boss devices around, take in different inputs and whatnot. And I can poke a button here and it will react. Okay, so typical boardroom controller, Crestron AMX. The difference here is we can also control devices. We have like a whole library full of devices that present you with commands to say that projector. The hardest part about controlling that projector is you have to send some sort of Ethernet or serial message to it to have it react, turn on, or change inputs or whatever. And the people that write those protocols are sadists, and they're absolutely terrible. It's not something that your everyday person would want to ever see or look at. So what we do is we create a driver basically for that projector that defines what power on is, what message that translates to. And so when you're in the show control environment, all you see is power on. So you can go in and write those drivers yourself, and we teach you how to do that. But for the most part, we just create that library. Once you do it once, you never have to do it again. So yeah, show control is all about that. It's all about that automation, but rather than just poke, do the thing I told you to do, it's poke, okay, I started something, it's timed, it's about 30 seconds long, I'm gonna trigger that effect. I'm gonna trigger that video, I'm gonna trigger that audio clip. So it's very timed and synchronized. So that's the key difference with show control. It's basically the automation of entertainment devices. Okay. Yeah, so it's, as I explained, it's, we try to keep it is essentially a programming language in a sense, but we try to keep it fairly high level. So some things are unavoidable with any programming language. Any programmers in here? We've got some engineers, so I'm sure you guys have done. What kind of programming are you guys doing these days? What languages? Cool, yeah, excellent. So just like languages like that, you can't avoid concepts like logic. You have to make decisions and decide, run this show, run the non-caption show or run the caption show, like that kind of stuff. That stuff happens. So we have that concept in here, logic, variables, keeping track of information, stuff like that. But for the most part, it's very high level. There's like some sort of event trigger. Maybe it's a ride control system with PLC talking to us, letting us know it's time to trigger a queue or something. So we can have it so that you can program that trigger and then trigger like a timeline that runs when that happens. So play the scene 1 timeline and Harry Potter Forbidden Journey, like kind of how it works. So very cool thing, but definitely different than typical C# or whatever. And we do offer free classes for it. So if anybody's interested in that sort of thing, just look us up, our website, alcorn.com, training. We do have periodic classes. So we just did one about a month ago. So we'll probably do one here in a couple months down in Orlando. So, and it's free. So keep it in mind. Here's another example of something we built. This is more on the audio visual side. So theme parks are pretty interesting when it comes to audio visual. A lot of us, think about audio visual and we're watching YouTube videos on our phone. That's obviously not how it works. It's a little bit like this, but basically the parks, the attractions need a lot of channels of audio, high quality, and they need a lot of channels of video, very high quality, and they need it all to be synchronizable, groupable, because we're doing stuff like, we're not doing Dolby surround sound or 7.1 or 5.1. We're doing like maybe 30 channels of synchronous audio because there's 10 figures that need speakers coming from them directly, maybe background music up above, that kind of stuff. So the channels add up quickly, and of course they want it to sound good. So this product basically does a lot of audio playback, but it can also do uncompressed video playback. So uncompressed is insane. It's not something you're ever going to find at home or even a theater, like an AMC theater or something. So all its formats are compressed. What we watch on our phone is compressed. But when we're in theme parks, especially where they're creating custom content just for that attraction, they want it to look good. So there's that aspect of it. The people producing the content want it to look good. They're artists and they want it to look as good as it possibly can. The other factor is something weird's going on, like you're, on a ride vehicle hurled in front of a 40-foot dome that's surrounding you. If that video is compressed, you would see the artifacts and the pixels right in front of your face. They don't want that. So uncompressed, clean image, high frame rate. We watch a movie, it's 24 frames per second. The stuff we do in theme parks is 60, 120 sometimes, and sometimes 3D, 60 frames per second per eye. So we do a lot of weird stuff, and those channels add up quickly. We also do not just one screen, but they might take a big curved screen and map, 7 projectors overlapping. Those projectors all need their own source. Those sources need to be perfectly synchronized or you'll see the seams. So that's why we have a lot of audio and video channels building up. And so we created this scalable platform that basically they can put one in and get up to 8 channels of 4K uncompressed video or 128 channels of uncompressed audio. And then they can obviously stack multiple frames together and have them be perfectly synchronized to build whatever they need for their attractions. So, and I talked about the bid loop thing earlier, right? This product name is kind of a hat tip to that because eventually, Steve didn't know this at the time, but when he worked at Epcot, or after he left Epcot and started Alcorn McBride, one of the first things Disney asked him to do was design a replacement for those products because they were so difficult to maintain. And at the time, digital storage was kind of advancing to the point where we started to have solid state media. So it wasn't like it is now where the disk is this big, but it was like this, the PCMCIA. And so we developed a product that would play audio from a PCMCIA flash card and be very reliable and not require turbo relaxing every night. So that's where the name came from. So the modules that go in this, like I said, all embedded design. As you can see, it's a custom design circuit board. But yeah, this is the audio module. And you'll notice, even though it's an audio module, we're not seeing like headphone jacks or RCAs or anything like that. Pretty much in theme parks or any commercial AV, we gravitate towards using network audio. One of the most popular standards right now is something called Dante. But those things are always evolving. Kind of the first popular one is called CobraNet. The people that created CobraNet left and created Dante. And then AES67 is another one. It's kind of a more generic version of Dante, essentially. So, but yeah, everything is plug a Cat5 cable in here, put it in a switch, plug it in here, and now I can route my audio channels everywhere. Whereas back in 1982, it was, oh, you want that audio to go over there? I gotta either rewire it or use a patch system, patch. So things have come a long way there. And this is what the video card looks like. So about the only connector that's going to look familiar other than the Ethernet connector might be DisplayPort, because that's used frequently for computers. But again, we tend to stay more professional in the theme park world or commercial AV. So we use something called SDI, Serial Digital Interface, basically uncompressed video over a single coax cable. And 12G SDI is 12 gigabits basically for viewers. So that could do up to 4K 60 single connection. So and then this right here is fiber optic SDI, because like I said, these things are stuffed in equipment rooms, probably 100 or 200 feet away from the projector. So they might choose to go optical to extend the signal, because as we've found today, HDMI is unfriendly. Doesn't really like to go more than 6 to 10 feet if you're lucky. So we do things a little differently. And then here's another example. Like I said, ride systems tend to do onboard audio. So, which is interesting. It's not as simple as just playing audio out of the speakers in the ride vehicle. There's coordination that has to happen. The ride system decides when the ride vehicle moves. So we need to know when that happens, where the ride vehicle is, and we need to synchronize our audio experience with that. So there's a lot of that going on. Communication and synchronous control. We need to synchronize with the wayside systems. So if somebody's speaking and we're hearing the audio from this device and the projection's coming from the wayside, from a projector and a bin loop, there needs to be enough coordination that when their lips are moving, this audio is on dead on. So that's actually a very tricky thing, especially since there's usually no wired connection between the vehicle and the wayside. So we're doing a lot of wireless communications. And then we're also doing a lot of synchronization methods like industrial automation synchronization methods like PTP or NTP, everybody knowing what time it is so that we can schedule things to happen at a very precise time. So it's definitely more complicated than it seems. And then also these things are always, equipment onboard ride vehicles are always stuffed in the most hostile place you can imagine. The guests are always prioritized. So this stuff gets stuffed under the seats or on the back, underneath some hatch or whatever. And so it's subject to basically very high vibrations. It needs to be small. It needs to be low power because vehicles are a lot of times battery powered or supercapacitor powered. Yeah, and it needs to like not put out very much heat. So there's a lot of special requirements. So that's kind of why this is one of our specialties, because it requires special design. You can't just throw a computer on board of a vehicle. So yeah. And then we also do things like this, paging and intercom. So paging would be like operations staff talking to guests. Sir, sit down, get back in the vehicle. Do not put your finger in that. And then intercom would be basically park people talking to park people. You know, somebody from operations saying, hey, maintenance, vehicle 5 is looking a little rough. You guys should probably pull it in and take a look at it. So we try to do this in like a more industry standard way, using those network audio standards so they're easy to troubleshoot. A lot of intercom systems were designed for like airports and they're proprietary. So if something doesn't work, it's hard to figure out why. So. All right, and this is where we're located now. So if you guys come down and visit, we're still in Metro West, but not far from where we used to be. But we actually have our own facility where we have a special training room, warehouse all of our stuff there, all of our engineering staff's under one roof. So, and we also have a tiki bar, which is awesome. So a lot of times when you tell people you have a tiki bar, what do you think? I think they have like a bench with like a little grass hut and maybe like 2 bottles of liquor. No, we have a really cool tiki bar. It's the first time we have like a show control experience in our building, which is awesome. Because normally we just get to talk about it. So yeah, we're running like 400 channels of DMX for lighting control. I think 12 channels of audio playback because there's these little masked characters on the wall that, you know, do a little show. They talk to each other, make jokes and stuff. Yeah, it's fun. And it's all running from one of our pieces of gear, the ride player. So yeah. Justin, I can tell, made this part of the presentation because he's very obsessed with tiki drinks. More tiki drinks. And that's Justin, so there you go. All right, cool. This next part, what I like to talk about is just more generic. This is not me, this is not Alcorn McBride, this is just, when I think back to when I was in your seat 20 years ago, like I kind of ended up at Alcorn McBride by accident. A friend of mine that I was going to school with, fellow double E, got me this part-time job at Coastside, basically fixing exhibits, changing batteries and Mars rovers and fixing ROVs and just random stuff like that. And that's what got me into the Alcorn equipment and working with it. And that's what got me into Alcorn McBride when I graduated. But like I said, I didn't know anything about what they did as far as theme parks. I was coming from the Science Museum angle. So I ended up there by accident. And I actually feel like a lot of people end up in the industry by accident. The fact that you guys have a group called TPED, Theme Park Engineering Design, that's cool. You're trying to do it on purpose. And I really appreciate that. That's why I'm here. And so, yeah, I just think back to if somebody had come to speak to me, what would I want to hear? Because if you had told me that there's all these different engineering positions for ride vehicles and media production and all this stuff, animatronics, I would have been like, sign me up for that. Because, you know, the recruiters are always heavy in there trying to get you to go into defense and factory automation and stuff. Does that happen here too? Who's the big recruiter here? What are they? Who tries to come pluck you guys?
Pratt and Whitney, they get long lines.
There you go. So that's pretty typical. A lot of schools, engineers, a high demand field. So kudos to you guys for being here. But yeah, that's what it's like. There's companies will come and pluck you. You're going to get a job. But I'd like to talk about what's going on with theme parks and how there's actually a lot more really cool niche-y tech jobs that you might be interested in. So I'll just speak to that. So first of all, I think one of the most important things to understand is I feel like this misconception is dying down, but a lot of people think, I want to get into theme parks, so obviously I need to work for, right, okay? Not true. There was a time where that was true. Like I said, back in early 80s and stuff, Disney used to do everything themselves, but that is no longer the case. Ever since those days, things kind of started getting outsourced to vendors. So vendors like Alcorn McBride, vendors like iTech Entertainment, interesting company. They have a very creative side to them. They'll design entire attractions or parks, concept, blue sky, but they also have this very like hardcore engineering division where they're building custom electronics for coaster vehicles and doing PLC programming for safety or for ride control. Wavo Controls, they're doing animatronics control. So Burkett Engineering, I mentioned them because Glenn Burkett used to work with Steve at Epcot. He left and founded his own company. They make electronics. You watch like the fireworks show, Magic Kingdom, the castle, this little strobe lights that blink, they make those. They just do random stuff like that. They're also a services provider. They'll go in and program, they call the ride show supervisory system, RSS, basically safety, PLC programming, that kind of stuff. They'll build like roller coaster lights, custom assemblies, 3D model them, extrusions, all kinds of cool stuff. You got architecture. So EXP is one of the most well-known companies doing mechanical, electrical, plumbing, MEP architecture. Garner Holt, they're building multi-million-dollar figures, which animatronics figures. I think that's so cool. That company is so cool because they have this perfect blend of like art and technology, because these figures are using like the latest and greatest servo motors and things like that to get nice, fluid, smooth motion in very small spaces. So they're like cutting edge technology, but somebody's got to put like this very artistic skin with hair and clothes all over it. So cool blend. Something you really only find in themed entertainment. Holoviz, they're a company that does, they do some of their own stuff, game stuff, but they also do integration. So they're like a customer of ours. They would buy our stuff. We don't actually install our stuff ourselves. We teach people how to use it and let them do the work. So Holoviz would buy our stuff, put it in an equipment rack like this, only about that tall, and probably like 5 or 6 of them, wire it all up perfectly, program it, test it, make sure it works. So Scenario, they're a well-known scenic company. So most of what scenic does is artistic. They're doing like, themed rock work, things like that, fiberglass sculptures, characters, things like that. But some of that is actually very technical too. So they might build like a TV to make it look like it's a painting that moves. I'm sure you guys might know what I'm talking about there. They might build an LED wall into a rock face or an faux ice face and make it look like the ice is like gleaming, like So there's a lot of technology kind of making it into that world. Oceaneering, weird company. They make like submarines and oil rigs and stuff like that. So they're a massive company, but they also have a division that makes ride vehicles. They're one of the go-to ride vehicle manufacturers. So yeah, it's not just about Universal and Disney. It's about the people, the companies they partnered with. And this is just a handful of them. So yeah, this is the kind of thing where if you're interested in any of the disciplines I talk about, feel free to follow up with me, because this is what I can do, is point you in the right direction and introduce you to people that work for these companies if you're interested in that sort of thing. So, but there's a lot of them. Okay, so some of the interesting things that are out there to do, like I said, animatronics or motion control. You have the artistic side of it, but it's also, you know, one of the most elaborate robotics things you can do. Garner was showing off a figure at our little ATC show. I think it had 36 axis of motion. Crazy. Very lifelike looking figure too. So there's that side of it, the electromechanical side, and there's also the programming side. So it's very timeline-based system as well. It looks familiar, probably looks like Audition or Premiere or any program like that. Only instead of audio or video, the things that they're storing are basically analog variables that keep track of the positions, like an elbow, for example. So the way that this is programmed is very interesting. It's not like to record something like that. It's like it's actually the puppeteer. So there's different ways to do that too. Sometimes they'll use like Xbox controllers or something like that. I've seen optical systems where they literally puppeteer like this, like marionettes or something. Joysticks, all kinds of stuff like that. So they can kind of record it, and they can do like all the axes at once, or they can do one at a time. They kind of bring it all together at the end. And they can even like fine-tune edit here. Like if they thought this move was a little too harsh, they can highlight that area and tone it down a little bit. So it's kind of like an interesting blend of puppetry and audio editing. So, but yeah, very unique. Not something you're going to find in another industry. Media production. So I bet there's a lot of kids going to this school learning media production. The interesting thing about the way that we do it, though, is typical media production is you have one screen and you might have like surround sound or stereo audio. That's not what we do. We'll have like, you'll be in a tunnel of 9 projectors all wrapped around you and edge blended, overlapped, blended perfectly so that it looks like one coherent video. And you might have like, I don't know, 20 channels of audio. You got 5 or 6 on the vehicle itself, and then maybe like another 15 off board the vehicle. So going into that as a media producer, what's going to sound the best? What's going to look the best? How do I even set up my environment to build 9 videos all at once and make it look the way that it does? Because it's warped around this weird surface. So it's very, very unique. There's only a handful of people that do that in this industry. So they'll fly in at the last minute, do their thing, and leave. So they also can't just like hook their laptop up directly to the system because it's so complicated. They have to have some sort of production environment that they've created, working in conjunction with people like us who are actually driving the real equipment to actually set up their environment to begin with. So very unique. The tools that they use are pretty much the same in the end. They're still using Final Cut or Premiere or whatever, Pro Tools, but they have to set up this kind of custom environment to really get into it and make it look and sound good. They also get to work with a lot of talent too, because, you know, they open an attraction at Universal, Mummy or whatever. They don't just want to play the stuff that you saw in the movie when you're watching it at home. They record new stuff. So they'll bring in the talent from the movie and actually sit down in a studio session with them and actually do new stuff. So cool profession. Onboard audio is actually a special talent on its own. And the reason why is because there's so many things going on. First of all, the theme park client bought a vehicle from a manufacturer or created their own, created a custom shell for it that looks themed, right? It goes with the attraction. And then somehow equipment has to get stuffed into this thing. It's got to not be too heavy. It's got to not use too much power. It's got to sound as good as possible, even though the person who designed the shell had no idea what audio acoustics are like and, you know, what's best for that. And they have to make the best of that situation. So this is a highly specialized field. There's only a handful of people and companies that get involved with this. And yeah, they'll do things like design custom speaker boxes to wrap around like seat restraints so that that subwoofer sounds as good as it possibly can. They have to do all the programming where multi-track and even multi-layer audio, like playing background music and then layering on voices or effects, cross-fading from one thing to another. So the programming is pretty complicated. And they also have to do the control programming where it's the ride player is talking to the ride control system where or it's talking to a device on the wayside to share its status, you know, whether an amplifier has failed or a speaker needs service or whatever, knowing when to trigger when the vehicle enters a certain area, all that stuff has to be programmed. So very specialized field, onboard audio. And then projection. So this is typical projection right here, projector, screen. But like I said, what we do is weird. This isn't even a bad one. This is an easy one. It's just a curved screen with 3 projectors that are edge blended. So there's a little overlap. The projectors themselves or the servers that are providing the video will actually like feather the edges, make them like dimmer on both to blend them together so that they look like one image and you can't even see that seam at all. They have to be aligned perfectly for that to work because if it's even like a pixel off, you'll see this shift. So there's a lot of specialized software and tools, cameras that are used to do that. Some attractions are so complicated that they have to be calibrated every morning. So techs go in there, they fire it up. It might have a manual calibration system where they bring up a computer interface and they throw up a test pattern and they align everything one projector at a time. Right now, there's a lot of auto calibration systems or AutoCal where they'll have multiple cameras. They'll click a button and it might take 5 or 10 minutes, but all these test patterns will start flying. The cameras identify where the projectors are, if or whether or not they're out of alignment, and will adjust. Correct. So physics is a thing here too. The projectors have to be in a certain place. The attractions are kind of built around a ride system. So figuring out the optics of that, whether or not custom lenses are required, where the projector should be mounted, making sure nothing's blocking it. That sounds like a simple thing, but it actually happens all the time. So yeah, highly specialized field. Companies like, again, there's only a handful of companies that do this very well. Like Electrosonic is a good example. This is kind of what they're known for. So, and then the ride systems, very cool electromechanical thing. Ride systems operate on PLCs. Have you guys learned about PLCs? No, yes, shake, yes, good. So PLCs stands for Programmable Logic Controller. They're used very commonly for industrial automation. So like automobile factories or conveyor belts, like the luggage systems at the airport, for example. They run on these systems called PLCs. They're very safety oriented. They're designed around, you know, don't turn that motor on unless this sensor is clear and that sensor is clear so that we don't hurt somebody. So that's how these things are programmed. Very good at keeping people safe and running very large motors and very large equipment safely, but not very good at show experience. So, but that's kind of where we come in, talking to these systems. But yeah, these are wonderful too. And I heard you guys are doing some sort of wireless ride vehicle project. That sounds cool. Very interesting. Like some of the cheaper vehicles, yeah, they just use tracks and they'll put like power in a rail and even communications like leaky coax or something like that in a rail. But yeah, some of these newer ride systems are really elaborate. They're using, you know, different location technologies to tell where the vehicle is very precisely within millimeters in a 3-dimensional space with no track or anything. And it can move in any direction at any time, usually battery powered, sometimes supercapacitor powered. So very cool, wireless communication. All right, and then I mentioned scenic. So like I said, scenic is mostly artistic, but there's such a cool engineering side to it. Like that is the fusion of this very artistic prop with like technology. There's a pressure pad inside there, so when you hit it, it goes back and it triggers a whole show control reaction so when they punch the lock. Or here, used to be that a lot of these figures and stuff were hand sculpted. Now it's all, not all, but some of it's all CNC. So we'll CNC styrofoam or whatever, coat it in fiberglass, make it look nice. So lot of tech stuff going there. And yeah, we see a lot of like themed AV where they'll, has anybody seen the Forbidden Journey queue line where they have the paintings that talk to you, like in the movie? That's basically an LCD panel without the backlight on. So you're shining light from the front. So you see the pixels changing, but it looks like a painting. So, and it's got some themed painting on top of it, or themed texture, so that it looks like a painting. So it's just this cool blend of technology and also theming. So somebody had to put that together and mock that up and show some creative people at Universal for them to go, that looks really cool. I'll take 50 of them. So that's a thing. This is one of my favorites, the interactives. So a lot of times when we talk interactives, especially when they're in the museum industry, we think like touch panels. You poke a button, it talks about something, you poke another button, it talks about something else. But in theme parks, we tend to do interactives like this, where you're holding something or something's watching you, a camera or something, and you perform some sort of action and you get a reaction, a themed reaction. So like my favorite example is the Harry Potter wand experience that they added when they did the second land and then retrofitted back to the original. So basically there's a system watching the wand and it can see what you're doing. And if you do the motion correctly with the spell, it triggers a show control cue. It comes back to us and we might trigger like a valve to open and rain on you with sound effects, lightning or whatever, thunder, and then, or trigger an animatronic or something like that. So there's this whole, we bring in all those disciplines together just because you wave the wand a certain way. So very cool thing. But yeah, that involves so many elements that somebody's really got to sit down and think about that. You know, how are we going to track the wand? What are we going to do? So, and then one of my favorites, show control. So show control is usually one of the last people to leave the job site because all these different vendors build their own little thing and they test their own little thing, but somebody's got to go in there and make it all work together. So talking to different systems, making it all work together synchronously. So the pictures I've shared here are, when I used to do this a lot, I don't do this too much anymore, but I used to travel all over the place and go program these systems, sometimes at the last minute, you know, a couple days before opening, and I would just set my laptop down to go do something, and I'd come back and I'd be like, what the hell did I do? Where did I put my laptop? A horse, or an electric chair. It's weird. What am I doing here? Why am I doing it? So, but anyway, this is definitely heavy us. We do show control all day long. Just a really unique thing. I think the thing that's most unique about show control is it's not just about understanding what we do. It's not just understanding how the controller works. You have to have this cool general overview of how everything works because you're talking to everything. You have to know what an audio DSP is because you're going to be sending in commands and changing mixing levels and stuff from show control. You have to know how a media server works. You're going to be triggering playback at certain times. You have to understand how projectors work, switching inputs, right, guys? You have to understand all that stuff because you're going to be sending commands to all these different things. So it kind of requires broad knowledge so that you can be really good at your job and make it all work together. So that's all I got. This is the Q&A session. I'm here for you guys. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to hire you, at least not today, unless any of you are who's graduating. Okay, I'm not here to hire you. I'm just here for that, you know, what's out there moment so you guys can think about this. And if you go home and you think about something that I talked about that interested you, you can send me an email and I will put you in touch with people and explain more, whatever you want to know. So I'm here to make you go into this industry on purpose.